Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at the schoolboy documentary star who has become a prison rapper boasting from behind bars about stabbing gang rivals. Background information. Halil Karagozlu's ultra-violent drill raps recorded on illegal mobile phones and posted on YouTube have been seen hundreds and thousands of times. Mr. Karagozlu, 20, has been building a rap career under the name Baby while serving 6.5 years for his role in a fearsome county lines drug mob. Before the gang were caught, he was filmed waving around wads of cash. It's a far cry from his appearance as a charming but troubled 13-year-old with an infectious smile in Channel 4's Educating the East End in 2014. During the Fly on the Wall documentary, he is a bright Year 8 pupil who is to be restrained by a teacher after lashing out at a girl for insulting his haircut. In the following weeks, he continues to misbehave, and at one point the police are even called. Mr. Karagozlu is constantly being taken home from Frederick Bremer School in Walthamstow, East London, by his granddad Emmett, who raised Halil and his brother when the parents became ill. Despite being a handful for teachers, the lad told interviewers in the series he wanted to reject the wrong path. Mr. Karagozlu even spoke of following in the footsteps of Mr. Ahmet, who had been a detective in Cyprus. He said, "It runs in my family, so I think I should carry it on, but there are people I'm not going to name in my family that are criminals. I'm not sure which side to go after, criminal or police. I would probably choose police though." Now, Mr. Karagozlu is virtually unrecognizable in the chilling videos except for his wide smile as he raps about fleeing from police. Mr. Ahmet, 68, saw the footage and said, "I didn't know of that. I'm going to have it out with him. He promised me so many times that he's not going to embarrass me anymore. I spent half of my life fighting against these kind of people." It is thought that the videos were recorded at HMP Cookham Wood Young Offenders Institution in Rochester, Kent. In one of the videos, which has more than 228,000 views, smiling Mr. Karagozlu raps about rivals running from his dagger. He adds, "Inject my blade and release my anger." In another he says, "Pop out the ride with Rambo, seen bare man dashing in shops." In 2019, Mr. Halil, then 18, and elder brother Mr. Ahmet, 20, were jailed for a county lines plot where their DM crew gang used vulnerable people's homes in Basingstoke, Hants, to sell drugs. This practice is known as cuckooing and was highlighted in the recent series of police drama Line of Duty. Both admitted conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, and the 8-strong gang were jailed for a total of 43 years and 2 months at Winchester Crown Court. DM Crew, which stands for Dangerous Minds, are said to be affiliated with the brutal East End-based Mali Boys. Mr. Karagozlu's granddad said, "He is a very intelligent boy, but with the wrong friends and the wrong people, so it got him into trouble. You don't know where they are going, you don't know with who they are getting together with, and when you find out, it's too late. It's very hard to see your grandchildren in that kind of position, especially me as a criminal detective for a long time." The pursuit of riches through selling drugs. Known as the DM Crew, the gang was sentenced on May 1st, 2019 at Winchester Crown Court for the roles they played in during the operation, which lasted from March 2017 to July 2018. During the 4-day hearing, the court heard how Ahmet Karagozlu, 20, of Stowe Crescent, Walthamstow, was seen to be heading up the operation known as the Wes Network, which targeted vulnerable drug users in Basingstoke to cuckoo their homes and ensure their deals were done behind closed doors and not on the streets. Prosecutor Mark Ruffle said that Ahmet Karagozlu was responsible for organising the distribution of the drugs, was in possession of the coveted drugs line, and had been responsible for recruiting a person aged 14 years old to run drugs for the gang. Sentencing judge Richard Parks QC said, "Even though there were others that were trusted with the Wes phone line, Mr. Karagozlu organised the distribution of this conspiracy for the best part of 10 months. The court heard that along with Ahmet Karagozlu, his younger brother Halil of Stowe Crescent, Walthamstow, and Oslem Simsek, 22, of No Fixed Address, were seen to take a leading role within the conspiracy. Mr. Halil, seen as Ahmet's second in command, and in evidence heard during the course of sentencing, his phone could be tracked to a number of addresses in Basingstoke and Tadley where the gang was cocooning. When he was arrested, he was found to have £12,000 in cash on his person, as well as electronic scales used for weighing the drugs. For Miss Simsek, the court heard how she worked closely with Halil Karagozlu from May 2018 and was responsible for holding onto large quantities of money and even on occasions trusted with the drugs line. Judge Parks remarked Miss Simsek had an active interest in dealing the drugs, even waking up Halil Karagozlu to make sure he sent the group text to drug dealers. As well as those who had a leading role, the gang has foot soldiers like Khan Sitchek, who would help run drugs for the gang coming back and forth from London. The court heard how Mr. Sitchek also be a chaperone for a younger member of the gang who had been recruited to run drugs. Mr. Sitchek, known as Caps, was also involved in a stabbing which surrounded a drugs dispute with two local drug addicts in October 2017. For Brian Whitfield, 18, of Shortlands Road, London, and Donald Willocks, 22, of Samson Road, London, their roles involved in the gang were during the early part of the conspiracy, but both were at some point in possession of the drugs line. Mr. Willocks was involved from March 2017 until June 2017, whereas Mr. Whitfield was seen as the link to the drugs network, starting back up again in September of 2017 after a period of laying dormant. Matthew Keeley, 40, of Reynards Close, Tadley, initially became involved in the gang as a drug user himself. The court heard how Mr. Keeley allowed the gang to use his property as a safe house rather than him being cocooned. Mr. Keeley later became a runner for the gang between May 2018 and June 2018 before he was arrested at his address along with Halil Karagozlu and Miss Simsek on July 18th. For her part in the conspiracy, Diane Brill, 42, from Basingstoke, was cocooned under the proviso that she would be able to get free drugs. However, her connection with the gang stopped after the stabbing in October of 2018. 3 other people had been sentenced in connection with the same conspiracy. Tyler Farley, 19, of Alderney Gardens, Essex, was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in jail. Faith Willis of Silverwood Place, London, was sentenced to 33 months in jail. And Ian Brown, 21, of No Fixed Abode, was sentenced to 30 months in jail when they appeared at Winchester Crown Court. The full sentences received at Winchester Crown Court. Halil Karagozlu, 20, of Stowe Crescent, Walthamstow, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and was arrested and sentenced to 8 years and 8 months. Halil Karagozlu, 18, of Stowe Crescent, Walthamstow, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and received a sentence of 6 years and 6 months in a young offenders institution. Brian Whitfield, 18, of Shortlands Road, London, was found guilty at an earlier trial of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 7 years in a young offenders institution. Khan Sitchek, 18, of Walthamstow, London, was found guilty at an earlier trial of 2 counts of wounding and 1 count of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 10 years in jail. Donald Willocks, 22, of Sansom Road, London, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 5 years in jail. Özlem Simsek, 22, of No Fixed Address, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. She was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in jail. Miss Simsek also pleaded guilty to 5 drug-related issues to a case in Ipswich, which she was sentenced to a further 5 years in jail to run consecutively. Matthew Keeley, 40, of Reynards Close, Tadley, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. He was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months in jail. Diane Brill, 42, from Basingstoke, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. She was sentenced to 2 years in jail, which has been suspended to 18 months. She was also ordered to complete 175 hours of unpaid work and 25 rehabilitation activity days. So what are your thoughts about this once famous child star and how his life became of the Wes gang, who are infamous dealers and went on to sell more than £400,000 worth of drugs across county lines? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.